Hello everybody and welcome to Open Minds 2019. My name is Mick Daniels. I have been a filmmaker since I was a teenager. In or around 2007, I was becoming increasingly concerned by what I was seeing in the media regarding human-caused, catastrophic and unprecedented global warming. I decided to make a film to highlight global warming and to advise people on how they could make changes in their lives to reduce the danger. Once I began my research into the subject, I very quickly discovered that the consensus science that we had heard about from the media was a lie. As my research continued, I came across a man time and time again by the name of Christopher Monckton. He had, among other things, been an advisor to Margaret Thatcher during her time as Prime Minister. According to the media, he was the world's #1 climate skeptic, and I wanted him in my film. In 2010, I travelled to Scotland where I filmed 4 hours of interviews with Christopher Monckton.
It's cold weather we have to worry about, and that could happen at any time. We're already 5,000 years overdue for the next ice age. That doesn't mean it's going to happen next week. It might be another 5,000 years before it happens, but happen it will on past experience. There is no particular danger from CO2. Even if there were, adapting to any climate changes that may occur is far cheaper, far more sensible, far less cruel to the poorest people of the world than following this hideously damaging policy of trying to shut down first the economies of the West and then to suppress the growth in the economies of the poorer countries. And as to the scientists, that small, malevolent clique who are driving this scare, and to the larger number of scientists who have found it expedient for the sake of keeping their jobs and their tenure, the seeker after truth does not put his faith in any mere consensus, however widespread, however venerable. Instead, he subjects what he has learnt of it to his hard-won scientific knowledge and to verification, scrutiny, measurement, inspection, investigation, inquiry, checking and checking again. The road to the truth is long and hard, but that is the road that we must follow. And if today even science will not seek and speak the truth, who will? In November of 2009, a large number of emails going back 10 years between some of the world's leading climate scientists, mostly in Britain and America, were revealed by a whistleblower who seems to have had access to the servers at the University of East Anglia, which is one of the main bodies which has been pushing the alarmist agenda on global warming. Thousands of emails. And these emails, largely written by just a couple of dozen scientists, clearly with political links and political motivations, showed that these scientists were collaborating in the invention, distortion of data and results, and the concealing of data and results from those who wished to check them, because they were pushing a political agenda. And when these emails were revealed, even the extreme left in the media, people like George Monbiot in The Guardian were saying, we've been misled. And these emails, when they were revealed in November of 2009, went round the world just in time for the climate conference in Copenhagen, and it was that more than anything else that made governments around the world realise that there was indeed, as we had always suspected, a small clique of scientists collaborating together over the internet to push the climate scare and to organise it. So the ClimateGate emailers, those are the people who know exactly what they're doing. They know there is no climate problem, but they know that they want to pretend that there is because there's money and power and influence in it for them. Now, there have been 3 whitewashing inquiries done in Britain since the ClimateGate emails came out. All of them said that nothing wrong had been done, but not one of them actually looked at the science. One of them was even called a scientific assessment panel, and it starts off with the immortal words, "This scientific assessment panel does not see it as its remit to assess the science." And so they got away with it because, of course, governments have now signed up to this, and if the British government had admitted that it had signed up to this on the basis of bogus science, it would have had admitted it made a very large mistake, and it wasn't prepared to do that. The lead author of that chapter of the IPCC's 2007 Fourth Assessment Report later admitted he knew that that figure was wrong, but he left it there, even though the reviewers had told him not to, because he wanted to influence government. It was as clear a deliberate lie as that. Was he prosecuted? No. Was the IPCC prosecuted? No. You probably heard about how cows farting are the real problem because methane is 23 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas than CO2. There are nearly 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, but there's only 1.7 parts per million of methane in the atmosphere. It was visible that methane concentration had been rising in the latter part of the 20th century, quite steeply. And then, from 1990 until 2000, the rate of increase began to slow, and in 2000 it stopped, and it really hasn't risen since, and not by much. So what happened? The largest source of additional methane in the atmosphere was the Siberian gas pipeline between Siberia and Europe, methane gas. And it was leaking. It was a Soviet construction, badly built by demotivated communist workers. It had holes all the way along. And then when Putin took over, he realized that every cubic foot of gas that came out of the pipeline in a leak was a cubic foot he couldn't overcharge Europe for. So he went down from one end of the pipeline to the other and had the whole thing repaired over the period from about 1990 to 2000. And once the pipe had been repaired, the methane concentration worldwide stabilised. So the idea that this is caused by cows farting is nonsense, and there's one reason why it's nonsense. The largest source of naturally occurring biogenic methane, in other words from living organisms, is termite ants. It has nothing to do with cows at all. And because termite ants produce so much more than cows do, you can have double the number of cows you now have in the world. It wouldn't make any detectable difference to the amount of methane in the atmosphere. And when we brought Gore in front of the High Court here in London in 2007, so that his movie couldn't be distributed to schools unless the schools were told it was a propaganda instrument and not a scientific presentation, we won that point and 8 others. And the judge said, not only of the sea level thing, but also of the film in general, the Armageddon scenario that he depicts is not based on any scientific view. That's an exact quote from the judge's judgment. So whatever else this is not a scientific process. This is a political process exploiting innocent climate scientists as a mere fig leaf to cover the fact that essentially these reports are put together by bureaucrats and not by scientists. And they're put together to achieve a particular political end and not to produce honest, impartial science. So when I had seen that at every level, among politicians like Al Gore, among academics, among scientists writing in the peer-reviewed literature, and among the IPCC's documents themselves, there were these lies being inserted, these falsehoods, all of which pointed in one direction, towards climate extremism, none of which had any scientific basis.
Since that time, I've held off on making the film, as each new year brings new information. Over the past 10 years, I have been involved in many debates on the subject. I have learned from those experiences. The simple fact is that the whole thing hangs on one unproven theory. That theory is that an increased level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is causing catastrophic and unprecedented global warming. So how do you deal with a person who tells you the science is settled, the debate is over? I have found that when most people are shown the following 3 temperature records and graphs, it will put a serious doubt in their minds. Common sense usually kicks in when a person can see the same temperature patterns that we're seeing today occurring hundreds of thousands of years ago before the human race ever even existed. These temperature variations were far greater than anything we have experienced in recent times. If you look to the right of the graph, you will see the Little Ice Age, which lasted 500 years and only ended in 1850. If you look at this temperature record covering the last 500,000 years, you will see that we are currently at the end of the 5th warming period covered in that record. The previous 4 warming periods, which happened approximately every 100,000 years, again occurred before the human race even existed. If you look at this graph showing the correlation between sunspot activities and the temperatures on Earth, the correlation is clear and undeniable. Despite my best efforts over the past 10 years, I have not found any evidence to support the theory that human-produced CO2 is causing catastrophic and unprecedented global warming. So in conclusion, show the naysayers the 3 temperature records. Ask them to produce the scientific evidence proving that carbon dioxide is causing catastrophic and unprecedented warming. Thank you for your attention.
Talking about the methane emitted by cattle, isn't that affecting the whole farming community and beef production in the country now?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, it is. It's curtailed as a result of this prediction that methane, cows farting is going to increase global warming, which Mountain said it represents 1.7% or 1.7 parts per million.
Hi. Has this not been linked to the resurgence of the grand solar minimums, where temperatures come and go, and due to the sunspots, and the temperatures are going that way again?
Absolutely, yes. There's something called the Milankovitch cycles. It was discovered by a Serbian scientist called Milankovitch. And what he discovered was that the Earth's orbit around the sun is not a perfect circle, it becomes elliptical. And this is what causes the 100,000 year ice age. An ice age every 100,000 years approximately.
This month we've got this new near zero energy building regulations, where all buildings have to comply with new insulation standards, which means very unhealthy buildings which can't breathe. Very, very scary, futures, but not at all researched properly. I wonder, it's been brought in as it's mandated. People, will be sent to prison if we get things wrong. Yeah, termites will eat all these sort of layers of breathable, vapor barriers and rats and whatever. I'm just very concerned about where it's going.
Well, look, there's lots of stuff going on. The electric car thing, it's insane. The measures that we are being forced to adopt to mitigate a problem that doesn't exist. This is a politically driven thing. This has nothing to do with science. The science, they closed down the debate 10 years ago. I'm sure all of you here know this. You can't talk about it. If you mention global warming, yeah, there's always been temperatures going up and down on the Earth. So global warming is nothing new. But what is in question here is catastrophic and unprecedented human-caused global warming, which of course isn't happening.
Hi. I don't know if you're aware, in the last 3 weeks, Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Foundation has published a paper that the reduction of CO2 would be genocidal to the complete planet. And I think it might be worth a read. I've got a link for it, but to me they're quite reputable, the LaRouche Foundation.
Yeah, look, I will absolutely check it out. And of course, you're absolutely right. If CO2 levels on this planet dropped below 250 parts per million, all the plants would start to die. If it dropped below 150 parts per million, the whole planet would be dead. CO2 is a life-giving gas. Historically, CO2 levels on this planet have been 8,000 parts per million. They're all cracking up now because it's 400 parts per million. It has previously been 8,000 parts per million, 20 times. If the argument held any weight, the Earth would have burned up back then. It didn't. So CO2 is a life-giving gas. Plants absorb it. They create sugars. They create oxygen. We all learned this in school. It's called photosynthesis. So to demonize CO2 is extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. But this is what you're up against. Thank you.